I cried myself to sleep last night because the Browns refused to throw it deep or run after first down. The Cowboys tore a hole right through our offensive line. My happiness they stole. Watson running for his life. What have we become? My Browns fan friends, tailgating since 8 a.m. just to watch us lose in the end. So Haslam, burn it all, your stadium of dirt. The Browns have let me down. The Browns have made me hurt.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 3, Week 2 of the Empire League podcast. I'm your commissioner, Andrew Cahill. That is your commissioner, Scott Sprague. Scott, say hello.
When did you become Andrew? You've never once identified as Andrew, and I don't like that you're going to start.
I got to start over now.
No, this is it. You are Andrew Cahill for the rest of the league.
Okay, great. I'm definitely Andrew at work at times, so that's how that happened. All right, great start. All right, well,
this is Andrew Cahill, and I am Scottathan Sprague.
Scottathan Sprague. All right, well, you know, we're finding new identities. We're figuring out who we are. That's what being a part of America in 2024 is all about. I watched the debate. Let's start with some news and notes. First, most importantly, pay your fucking league dues. Pay your league dues. Not hard. There's a link in the chat. If you can't find it, reach out to me. Big thank you to Johnny Cash, B. Guider, Tequila Bob, and the champ himself for already jumping in, paying their dues before the end of week 1. Everyone else, shame on you. That's all I have to say. Scott, you have anything to add?
Sounds about right.
Great. Let's move on to some actual NFL news here. So probably the biggest news of the weekend involved your team, and that was Kyle Shanahan, who essentially fucked the Unicorns. He obviously, you were able to pull out a victory because of course you were, but Christian McCaffrey was listed as like questionable, and everything I saw, because I have him in another league, everything I saw said he's good to go. This is just like one of those preseason injuries to like get him out of playing preseason games. All of a sudden,
there arose such a clatter.
Here comes his game, and Jordan Mason is starting, and Christian McCaffrey's not playing at all. And the question that everyone is asking is, when do you think Christian McCaffrey was listed out within the facility in Santa Clara? Because Jordan Mason says he knew on Friday he was going to start this game.
Yeah, well, I did. I spoke with Chris and head coach Kyle Shenanigans on Friday, and I said, look, I don't think we need CMC to win this game, neither against the Jets nor against Olave Lamp. This season is about to be endurance. Both me and the 49ers are both going title hunting this year. So the name of the game is going to be keeping Mr. McCaffrey as fresh as possible in games that we don't need him, so that he's healthy down the stretch in that week 14 through 17. So this was planned from the very beginning.
It honestly wouldn't shock me at all if they were so confident that they could beat the Jets. Although I will say that if there's one thing on the Jets that does scare you, it's their defense. We talked about that at length last year when I tried to convince myself and the world that the Giants' defense was just as good.
Yeah, how'd that go?
Well, they're the worst team in football. So, like, we all take L's sometimes. The Giants more than anyone else.
Yeah, no
But
kidding.
I think ultimately this is a story to watch. If McCaffrey, who says he's going to play, but again, everything was pointing to him playing in week 1 and he didn't. So if he doesn't play, and especially like I've seen this described online as an Achilles/calf injury, which that scares the shit out of me for a guy his age who plays the position he plays. Like, this is definitely worrisome as a Christian McCaffrey owner.
It's not great, Bob. I mean, it's not what you want. But again, I think he has said that he's ready to go. He said that he's ready to play again. I think it really is about just managing workload to make sure it's okay, because that's something that needs rest. And if you can get him rested through the first couple of weeks of the season, then it's not going to be a long-term thing.
Let's hope so for my other team's sake, not for Killing Unicorn's sake. But speaking of killing unicorns and injuries, Puka Nacua injures his knee. He's put on IR, puts him out for at least 4 weeks, and because of a bye week at the end of that, Puka is not going to be back before week 7. So the question that everyone's trying to ask or trying to figure out the answer to is, who is going to benefit from this injury? And
And why isn't it the Killing Unicorns?
it could be a number of players that we'll get to. But Scott, do you think that this is just going to be Cooper Kupp going back to like 2021 and like lighting the world on fire?
Yes, but he's also somebody that has an injury history. So, yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. He will be the shining star for weeks 2 through 5, and then week 6 they have their bye week, and then if there is a just and merciful God, Puka will be back. I think, yeah, he's going to be the workhorse because that's just who he is. That's what their team, the Rams, have always been. But that's dangerous because he is also somebody that has sustainable injury problems, and every year it's something. And the way to mitigate that is to put other pieces around him so he's not getting tackled every time they throw the ball.
As the Kieran, owner in this league, do you feel like there's any chance that he benefits from this injury? He sees a little bit more work?
First of all, I don't own any of these players. That is a very derogatory way to look at this. I am the Kieran Williams manager. I enjoy working with him. And so I reject the premise of your question. That said, I think... I hope it's one more person that is good at catching footballs that they will be looking towards to throw it.
Well, let's talk about some of the other guys.
It sure isn't Blake Corum. I'll tell you that. That made me feel real good.
It sure isn't Blake Corum. Not yet, at least. So let's talk about some guys who actually are allegedly good at catching the football. That is Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, and Colby Parkinson. Scott, you picked up Demarcus Robinson on the waiver wire for $7. Griff picked up Tyler Johnson for $5, and Bob picked up Colby Parkinson for $11, beating out Griffin's $5 bid. So definitely, we talked about Bob last week really wanting to be a part of the offense here. It seems like everyone is looking to catch that magic for the next few weeks and ride that wave. Obviously, you got Demarcus Robinson, but you were going after Johnson as well. Johnson seemed to get the work last week, but do you think that it's going to be Robinson this time around?
I was watching that game. He lined up where Puka normally does in those that slot area, and that's what I'm going for. They both had the same amount of targets. I feel like there was more quality looks that went towards Demarcus Robinson. I obviously have no fucking idea who it's going to be. But Demarcus Robinson has been there longer. There's a longer rapport there with Matt Stafford. And so for those reasons, I went towards him over Tyler Johnson. Plus, I've had Tyler Johnson on my fantasy hockey team for a number of years, and that never led to anything. So, for those reasons, Demarcus Robinson was the guy that I chose to throw in my bid for. Normally, 7 fab is more than I would spend on a temporary solution. But since it's a temporary solution to my own problem, which is a hurt Puka, and Robinson will go back into the ether as soon as Puka is back, I felt like that was a solid move for me to make. Colby Parkinson, he's good. He's a young tight end. Bob went deep for him because he needed tight end help because he had Ferguson. But I don't. I think that might be just a squidge more than he needed to pay for that, and I don't think that that's going to be the answer to his problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like, Jake Ferguson is, probably better than Colby Parkinson, but I know that he is potentially going to miss a game or two, so that does explain the $11 bid on a guy who I think is a replacement level
Tyler
tight end.
Higbee's working his way back from injury too, so
yeah, no, I mean, Parkinson has all the opportunity in the world to like be a playable tight end. That position, as we know, is usually not much more than like 8 guys deep. So the fact that he doesn't have one of those guys makes sense. So you would go out and try and get someone who maybe could sneak into that 8 spot for a few weeks. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think that this is a dice roll. It seemed like the same people were pretty much going after each player. Your brother and B. Guider both put in bids on Demarcus Robinson. Bob, of course, dropped Demarcus Robinson for Jordan Whittington last week. Did not get into the sweepstakes again. And then you and Griff went after Tyler Johnson. And the only reason that you didn't get both guys is because you would have been over the limit for your roster. So,
I dropped
to
Khalil Herbert for both of them, so I was only ever going to get one of them. But I had the correct bid on both.
Yes, congrats to you. And I do think dropping Khalil Herbert is a clear move. And honestly, the fact that Daniel Jones was on the roster, like we said it last week about our guy Hendon Hooker. What are you thinking? Like,
I mean, he's on your NFL team, so let's.
I don't know what we're thinking.
That question. Why don't you? So what's his contract worth?
$40 million a year.
Yes, but it's like 160, isn't it a 4-year contract?
It is, yeah. But they can get out of it.
You've probably read this before, but I would like to answer. I would like you to voice your opinion on this particular statistic. Since he signed that $160 million contract, he has thrown more more touchdowns to the other team than he has to the New York Giants.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my thought is that Daniel Jones is not good.
Would you rather have taken that money and put it towards, I don't know, it's hard to come across franchise players, maybe someone like Saquon Barkley, if he was on your roster at the time, instead of Daniel Jones?
Honestly, I mean, as a Giants fan, like, I would, of course, rather have Saquon. Like, watching him score 3 touchdowns for the Eagles in week 1 was physically painful. I think, honestly, Joe Shane probably should have just not done either deal and just tanked, like, fully. Because I feel like as Giants, like, the Giants, like, they always win just enough games to get themselves out of, like, the good quarterback sweepstakes. Like, we're always picking, like, 4th, and we never get the quarterback to drop to us. And when we do, we don't take him. But, like, it I don't know. It's a tough one. It's just, like, I've been thinking about this a lot as a Giants fan, and it's, like, ultimately Daniel Jones led the team to the playoffs and won a playoff game in his fucking contract year. Shane had no choice but to sign him. It doesn't.
There was a choice.
There was no
always
choice.
A choice.
There was no choice. Any GM that makes the playoffs, wins a playoff game, and then lets his quarterback walk to go draft someone in like the 15th or 28th or pick up, the Gardner Minshew's of the world, that guy is on the fast track to getting fired. And, it is extremely unfortunate that Jones was behind the worst offensive line potentially to ever play football last year and then suffered this major injury. And I would guess that he isn't even remotely close to fully back. He looks like he's gun shy. He's incapable of pushing the ball down the field. And I think that he will get benched within the first 4 weeks of the season.
I cannot wait to see $160 million Daniel Jones on the bench of the Giants and not one person in the crowd clamoring to have him put back in.
The only reason to play him is that the Giants think they have a better chance of losing with him starting.
Yeah, so that's true. The interesting thing is, we've completely moved away from fantasy football. The interesting thing is that if he plays and gets hurt, it's going to trigger more guaranteed money in his contract, which just makes it 20 times funnier.
That fact in and of itself tells me that the reason they're playing him is that they know they can't win, and they're just playing for a top 2 draft pick. The fact that they're risking having to pay this guy more money if he gets hurt again, and they're putting him behind an offensive line that is built with rubber bands is as good a sign as any that they are not a serious organization right now.
Well, his name is Will Howard. You can draft him out of the Ohio State University. He'll be sitting waiting for you guys with the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, I just can't wait for the entire world to get to watch the Giants and the Panthers play in London.
Isn't it in Germany?
It doesn't matter. In Europe.
Well, it does, because London has never done anything to deserve that kind of atrocity. Germany has done.
Oh yeah, it is in Germany.
It is deserve having this happen on their home soil.
Yeah. So that is going to be like America's revenge. Moving back to fantasy football, we want to pick up where we left off on the waiver wire. So we want to start a new segment this year, and that is the smart move of the week. So this week, Scott, you have the honor of picking the smart move of the week. What do you got?
Well, it wasn't Colby Parkinson for 11 fab, that's for sure. I actually really like Griffin picked up Alan Lazard for 12 fab, and looking at it looks like I would have had the 11th bid there, or the next bid for 11 fab. I thought it was a good pickup, especially dropping Jahan Dotson. He's not doing anything, which rest in peace to his career. But Alan Lazard came out, had a big day. He's not going to do that every week he's not going to out catch Garrett Wilson every week, but forever, Aaron Rodgers has shown that when he finds a receiver that he trusts to catch it, come down with the ball and make plays, that he will just continue peppering that person. So maybe it ends up being a flop, but I think that was an interesting dart to throw, especially dropping someone like Dotson who's not going to do anything the rest of the season. Where if Alan Lazard keeps getting that volume or anywhere near that volume, he's going to be perfectly fine depth piece.
Yeah, it's a good pickup. I don't know. I looked at it and I just don't want any part of the Jets offense.
But Aaron Rodgers has always
he's got his guys
and stuck with them, and he's played with Alan Lazard before. He has not played with any of the other people before. I'm not saying he's going to be like a world beater or anything, that he's going to break the league, but
no, but early season could be like a safety net until Aaron feels more comfortable with the guys. So, no, good pickup.
He has a better receiver on the team. It's only a matter of time till he realizes that. But until that happens, I think Alan Lazard was a sneaky pickup.
Yes, so congratulations to Griff for getting the inaugural smart move of the week. So now we move on to the next part of this, which is the dumb move of the week. And Griffin, you get to win that too. So congratulations, Griffin. You get the dumb move of the week as well. And the dumb move of the week is dropping Tucker Kraft while picking up Alexander Madison for 7 fab while keeping Luke Musgraves. Luke Musgraves didn't play. He had like 15 snaps or something like that. Tucker Kraft was the tight end 1 in Green Bay. Griff has both guys. I don't know why he would drop Kraft over Musgraves, even though both of us can admit Tucker Kraft is not winning you your fantasy league this year. He is probably not a top 10 fantasy tight end. So ultimately, this is probably a nothing move, but I do think that was a very strange and dumb choice. So congratulations, Griff, on winning both of those awards. Scott, did you have any thoughts on this Luke Musgraves, Tucker Kraft situation?
Well, my thoughts are that neither of them belong on anybody's roster, and so maybe this is like a redeeming first step towards cleansing that bullshit off your roster. So if next week he also drops Luke Musgrave for another mid to bad backup running back, then I'll be on board with this. But my hope is that he doesn't think Musgrave is the better of those two options, because the answer, of course, is that neither are the best of those two options.
Agreed, especially with Jordan Love hobbled and likely not playing. Let's just talk about, before we do have one other dumb move of the week, and before we get to it, let's just talk about this Alexander Madison pickup. It's 7 fab. You know, as a Zamir White manager,
Thank you.
I really thought about putting in an offer on Madison because I understand the appeal, right? He played a higher percentage of the snaps. He played more when the team was down, which you would expect them to be down quite often because the Raiders aren't very good. And then, you know, he got the receiving work and he caught the touchdown. So it's like I can see the appeal there. I think the question ultimately is, do we think that this is real, or do we think this is just week 1, like, you know, Madison probably played more in the preseason, so, you know, he got more run this time around. Like, what do you think this is?
Well, he sucked running the ball. He ran 5 times and didn't get to 20 yards, which is not good.
He's basically Cordero Patterson before Cordero Patterson popped.
Yeah, he was targeted 6 times. He caught 4 passes for over 40 yards and the touchdown. In a league that is half PPR and we get a bonus for first downs, I think the passing work is more interesting than I am comfortable saying, because I don't like anyone on the Raiders whose name is not Brock Bowers. I don't know. Running backs are hard to come by, and this isn't the worst pickup that you could have done, especially if you're dropping a tight end that you'll never play.
Yeah, I looked at it, and honestly, the thing that prevented me from putting a bid in was that I feel like Alexander Madison is just another version of Jaleel McLaughlin, who I already have. A third down back who plays when the team is down. Like, you know, that's pretty much what he is. But
9 yards an attempt.
But, you know, Madison scored a touchdown, so he is going to be a touchdown-dependent flex, and, you know, that's more than Tucker Kraft is ever going to be. However, that's still the dumb move of the week. So congrats, Griff, on winning both of those. The second dumb move of the week, which is not actually a move from this week, is Scott not picking up Jordan Mason and having him on deck when Christian McCaffrey went down. That is entirely on Scott. We mentioned it last week, and then Christian McCaffrey actually missed a game. And as I said, Jordan Mason was a top 5 running back this past week. He was essentially Christian McCaffrey.
First of all, no, the fuck he was not Christian McCaffrey.
From a value standpoint, he was number 3.
No, the fuck he was not. He was number 3, but that is not what Christian McCaffrey is.
I'm just saying he got almost all the work in the backfield. He was targeted out of the backfield.
I seem to recall Deebo Samuel getting a rushing touchdown. That doesn't sound like something that happens when Christian McCaffrey is available.
Of course,
I'm just saying, look, You want me to say, look, I made a mistake, a miscalculation during the preseason when, there was a lot still up in the air. At the time, Christian McCaffrey was healthy, but, not being used in the preseason because he's Christian McCaffrey. He doesn't need a preseason.
Sure.
I was over the roster limit, which was, of course, fine in the preseason. So I didn't have the ability to just drop and pick up someone the morning that Elijah. Who the fuck is he? Elijah Moore?
No, that's a wide receiver.
That's a wide receiver on the Browns. That's also on my team.
Do I need to look this up for you?
No, I need to look this up for me.
Elijah Mitchell.
Elijah Mitchell. He went down for this season, and Eric, who originally picked up Elijah Mitchell to spite me, has now picked up Jordan Mason, and assumingly to spite me again. Again, this is I said it. This will be the storyline all season. Is I feel like my team is good enough to make the playoffs. It's going to be a question of what version of my team is healthy during the playoffs. That will dictate if I win or if I don't.
All right. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. But take this L and live with it for the rest of this week. Final waiver segment here. Nolan move of the week. This is not necessarily a move that Nolan made, although it usually will be. But it's a move that Nolan would have made. Now, there wasn't a Nolan move of the week this week, but it'll happen. So stay tuned.
Anything or shooting yourself in the foot or making a hedge on something that doesn't pay off. This is what we're talking about. You all know. You know what it's like to Nolan something, You
know what it is. You knew it as soon as I said it. You knew what it was. You were like, oh, yeah, that's a Nolan move. So, yeah, there was only one other waiver pickup. I picked up Devon Veli. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce his name, but he had 8 catches on 8 targets. I got him for $2. I dropped A.T. Perry, who is like the 4th receiver on the Saints. So, yeah, nothing really notable there. Probably never cracks the lineup. All right, cool. So, as you were just talking about, Scott, this season, we were looking through the rosters, and depth is really going to be the key to this season. I think even more than in the last 2 seasons. It felt like in the last couple years, there was always like 1 or 2 like lock 'em in starters on everybody's bench. But looking through this year, there's a lot of teams that are thin and really banking on rookies or second-year players to like really become playable, if not borderline starters, which is just an interesting change in the Dynasty League format. We're all trying to get younger, I think, knowing that the league could go on for a long time. But what's your take on this sort of epidemic of thin benches in the league this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a product of we had a very exciting draft, and then people had to make room for all of those rookies on their roster, thus dropping a lot of people like Alan Lazard or those caliber players that we used to have on our benches. It's funny that we all seem to do that, where we all lean towards the new hotness coming into a draft. We're in a weird position where most dynasty leagues, the benches are probably twice as deep as ours is. But just because of how we set it up, our benches are shorter, still longer than a redraft league, but are shorter than a typical dynasty bench where there is nobody out there in the waiver wire. So I don't know. I'm sure we'll see it balance over the next couple weeks when people get frustrated with rookies or realize that they're in a position to win this year, and so they push for win now players and kind of leave their future assets either onto the waiver wire or make trades or something like that. But we didn't see this kind of it really, like, everyone's bench seems to have 2 or 3 rookies that haven't even played yet, players that had 0 to 1 points, and we didn't see this at this point in the season last year.
No, we didn't. And like, I know that at the end of last season, a couple of teams, myself included, like would drop guys and pick up guys for this year. Like I picked up A.T. Perry because he did flash a little bit at the end of last season.
Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, Zamir White. I know that Nolan picked up a couple guys, and it's like there's a lot of guys that I think even going back to last season we were looking at and we were saying, oh, this might be a guy next year. I'll pick him up. I'll just see what happens. But like what ended up happening, like you said, is that all these vets ended up on the waiver wire, and it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of works out. Whether this strategy where it seems like everyone, as of right now, is trying to play for both this year and the future. There's very few teams that I look at and I'm like this is like a win now team. Yeah. Your team would probably be the exception to that. Like you're in win now mode, but you still have a number of young players. But that does like kind of point out a very good question about how to approach the league this year, which is, we're in year 3. Obviously, as everyone should know, if Scott wins, it'd be back-to-back years. It means that the league resets. I don't think anybody wants this league to reset after 3 years, but with the exception of Scott, because he wants to win twice in a row. But I think the teams are going to have to be really honest with themselves because there is a lot of young talent on their benches, and those could be packaged for good players right now if you think you're gonna if you're in that win now window. So, and like we need teams to be being aggressive and making moves to try and defeat Scott because, as we all know, his team is stacked. I mean, he's down Christian McCaffrey and Puka, and he still put up the 3rd most points in the league. Like, that's
well,
that says a lot.
Puka did play for the first half of the game and then came back for a couple plays in the second half. So he didn't like zero out like CMC did. I will say that, and I've said this to other people I've tried to make trades with. If I win, then the league resets. But if anybody else wins, it doesn't and it won't for a while. So, before you go rejecting any trade offer that comes from me, just because it comes from me, just remember, if I don't win, the picks that you're getting from me, the players that you're getting from me are all going to be things that you carry into next season. And there's last year, even though I didn't say it out loud, last year I felt like I was as close to a lock to win the title as you could have in this game.
Yep.
That's not the case this year. I think there are holes in the lineup. There are injury questions certainly already, where star players are out. None of my 3 rookies that I drafted have played a snap yet. This is a more vulnerable team, so I'm not going into it with the attitude that I have a locked-in chance of winning, which nobody has a locked-in chance of winning, but last year I was as close as you could possibly be to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately once Kieran and Puka last year turned into what they turned into, which is top 10 guys at their position, if not top 5 guys at their position, it did seem a little bit like a lock, and I definitely got that vibe from the whole league. But, look, ultimately when it comes to trading with Scott, just put the same champ tax on that you put on me last year. I know that, but I still got moves made. You'll still get moves made. But I do think that, like, take the this would be my point of view on our league this year. You got to look at like the first 4 weeks of the season, and if after the first 4 weeks you're 3-1, you're 4-0, like you've been scoring at the same level as the other good teams in the league, you have to like really ask yourself the question, like, am I willing to like make an aggressive move to put myself in that tier of like, this is a real contender? Because like someone will make that trade with you. Someone who's 1-3 will make that big trade with you to like lock in future assets and like not necessarily play for next year, because nobody should be playing for next year, but like setting themselves up for success in the future. And like you just have to like really think about it, because there is going to have to be some level of consolidation at the top of the league, or else we're going to have a very interesting season where there's maybe a lot of teams who are hovering around 500 or like 1 or 2 games over 500 because there's just so much parity.
So much parry, like AT parry.
Yeah, AT parry. But yeah, anyway, I said, apply a champ tax to Scott, but really just don't make any trades with Scott.
I feel like I've paid the champ tax and I'm still not getting deals done. And these are deals that I genuinely think are, me against the field. I am the underdog.
Okay.
As far as winning. I feel like the league has a better chance of winning the title than I do. So set yourself up for next year. Set yourself up for this year. Let's make a deal.
Okay, well, here's my last question, Scott. Here's my last question. This isn't on the show, Doc. This is just off the top of the dome.
Sweet.
Just looking at week 1, and we don't want to overreact. It's 1 week.
Okay.
Who are you looking at as competition for this year? Who do you think really has a chance to push you for the title?
I think there are a number of teams that have potential. And really it's what team, the question you're really asking is what team do I think are going to make the playoffs? Because I think, again, once we get to the playoffs, it's going to be a huge question of how many of my players are healthy in that time frame and who can have a big week on the other side when they go up against me in the playoffs. I think Benny Denny had a shit week. He's doing his contrition probably as we speak. But he's been, if Kelsey and all them get fired up, then he's certainly right back in it. Sprog's dogs, that goddamn Dak CD Lamb stack is always a problem. I think him trading Waddle away made his team weaker. We talked about that last week, but then again, I still think Brock Bowers is an absolute stud muffin in the making. So him locking in that tight end position is going to help his team a lot. If we had a league that you could start 4 tight ends, I feel like your team would have a conversation.
Tight end brigade, here we go.
Yeah. That would be an interesting question. I'm not trying to dodge it, but I feel like that's an interesting question to ask me midway through the season, because there are a lot of 0-1 teams that I feel like are really good. There are some 1-0 teams that I feel like probably won't make the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see, really, once bye weeks come up and people's depth is tested, is going to answer that question of which ones I'm scared of and which ones I'm not, because it's all well and good when everyone goes into week 1 with a healthy roster. I feel like my roster has already taken a pretty significant hit, and that doesn't feel super great, where it might get gross during the season, but it's a brand new season once we get to the playoffs, and I'll have an actual answer for that question once we get there. I'll tell you exactly which teams I'm shaking about and how confident I feel in my own.
I noticed that you didn't mention Nolan's team, who did score the most points this week.
Yes.
And obviously, we've talked a lot of shit about Nolan, but if you look at his team, it kind of looks like the classic, like, redraft ideal lineup.
I'm confident that he's going to manufacture a way to shoot himself in the foot. I don't know how. I don't know when. I'm just confident that he'll do it, or the players on his team will decide that they can't contribute to that kind of franchise. Marvin Harrison's already taken a stance He's like, I'm not scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, he's barely even getting catches.
I'll say Nolan's starting lineup right now, as it stands, with everyone healthy and not on a bye week, is twice as good as it was last year. He did a really good job of making his team top heavy. He's got. I would be very nervous if I was looking at his bench and feeling confident that once injuries start piling up, once bye weeks start rolling around, I feel like he took all of the weight on his roster and pushed it all to the top end. Yeah. Which, if he's healthy in the playoffs, then it doesn't matter, and he'll have all those guys, and none of them will be on bye week. So, that's the tightrope that he's walking. But I feel like if he gets into a position with some injuries, it's gonna get real gross real quick, and he's gonna be thinking about playing Jalen Polk or Jalen McMillan or whatever other Jalen he can pick up off the waiver wire.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree. I think that there's a lot of top heavy, but I do like Brian Thomas. Week 1 he showed out. Deontay Johnson I think is gonna have better days ahead. T Higgins is T Higgins, so like if he can get his shit together. There's something, but yeah, I think ultimately, what we've been talking about. Yeah,
but Joe Burrow looked like shit, and they were playing against the New England Patriots, who aren't good.
I know.
I'm just saying, like his team is like top to bottom is better than it was last year, and it's better than it was last year by a fairly significant margin. So he might get the most improved award. I don't think he's title hunting yet.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Shiesty looked like he is never going to be the same after that shoulder injury, or elbow injury, whatever it was. Yeah, not good. But hey, thank you for going through that. I think it's like insightful to see like just how close everything kind of is right now. There's like maybe one or two teams that aren't really contenders at this point, but it's definitely a lot closer than I think it was at any point last year right now. So everyone should feel very good that they have a chance to contend, especially if they make smart moves over the next like 4 to 6 weeks. I think that's when like the biggest moves will probably get made, but we'll see what happens. But that's all for this week. Scott, thank you for joining and recording yet another podcast. I know how you feel about the podcast. You made that very clear at the end of last episode, which I don't think anybody actually got to. But
I feel better about doing this whole song and dance when I am the clear-cut best team in the league. Any hesitation I have on the podcast is directly attributed not only to how I'm doing in this league, but also how I'm doing in my other leagues, which at the moment is less than stellar.
Well, we will continue to check in with you, and for everyone else, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for listening.
Pay your fucking dues.